You have been taught all your life to bow before money. You have been trained, almost hypnotized, to watch it, to fear it, to chase it, to worship it in secret. A number written in ink or glowing on a little screen has dictated your moods, your decisions, your peace, your sense of worth. When the number rose, you felt strong. When it fell, you felt small. When it disappeared, you felt as though the ground itself had been taken from under your feet. And tonight, I have come to tell you something that will sound, at first, almost blasphemous to the world you know. Money is not your master. Money is your servant. It does not think. It does not choose. It does not feel. It is not the source of power. It is the expression of power. And that power is not in the coin, nor in the ledger, nor in the vault. That power is in consciousness, your own wonderful human imagination. You have reversed the roles. You have taken the shadow and called it substance, and you have taken the substance and treated it as though it were nothing. You have allowed a piece of paper, a figure on a page, to tell you whether you may feel safe, whether you may feel free, whether you may sleep in peace. You have given that which is dead authority over that which is living. Tonight I have come to set this in order. I speak to you as I spoke to men and women in small halls. In the 1940s and 50s, when they came with tired faces and anxious hearts, clutching at problems that seemed immovable, debt, lack, unpaid bills, fear of tomorrow. They thought their bondage was to money, but it was never to money. It was to their belief about money. Hear me well. Your bondage is never to the thing. It is always to the meaning you give the thing. You look at your purse, your wallet, your bank account, and you say, this controls me. This decides what I can or cannot do. This determines what my life shall be. And the moment you talk that way, you have bowed the head of the living God before an idol. For the only God that creates your world is your awareness of being, your I am. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That word is not sound on the air. It is your inner assumption, your inner speech, your inner acceptance of a state. When you say within yourself, I am poor, I am limited, I am always struggling, you are using the very name of God, I am, to decree poverty, limitation, and struggle. And the law, being faithful and impartial, must bring forth in your world that which you have declared of yourself. So you have taken that holy name, I am, and placed it beneath a number. You look at the number and say, because this is small, I am small. Because this is empty, I am empty. Because this is low, I am low. You have let the effect tell the cause what it may be. You have put the servant upon the throne and sent the king to sleep in the servant's quarters. This is the great reversal. Tonight we begin to reverse it again, this time in truth. Money is not an independent power, moving through the world as it pleases. It is not a capricious God, blessing some and cursing others. Money is a symbol, a tool, an obedient instrument of the state you occupy in consciousness. It is clay in the hands of the potter, and you are the potter. Your consciousness is the only creator. Everything else is its creation. If you truly accept this, not as a pretty phrase, but as the law of your being, you will never look at money the same way again. You will stop asking money for permission to feel worthy, to feel safe, to feel abundant. You will stop standing at the door of your own life as a beggar. You will recognize that the power has always been where Scripture says it is within you. The kingdom of God is within you. Not in the bank, not in the economy, not in the hands of another man. Within you. Yet, what have you done? When the outer world showed you a small figure, you said, I am poor. When the outer world presented a bill, you said, I am in trouble. When the outer world delayed payment, you said, I am afraid. You allowed the shadow to tell the sun how bright it may shine. Tonight I ask you to listen as though you had never heard anything about money before. Forget everything the world has told you, that money is hard to come by, that you must earn every penny by the sweat of your brow, that some are born to have and others born to do without. Forget the talk of good times and bad times, of booms and depressions, of favorable and unfavorable conditions. These are only pictures on the screen of life, produced by the hidden projector of consciousness. Behind all conditions stands one cause. What are you conscious of being? If you are inwardly convinced, I am always short, then life will faithfully echo, you are always short. If you secretly hold, money slips away from me, life will say, yes, it slips away. If in your inner chamber you murmur, I never get ahead, the world will chorus, you never get ahead. You have been speaking to money all your life, though you did not know it, not with your lips, but with your state, your constant inner feeling of yourself. You have told it, you are stronger than I am. You decide how I feel. You are my master. And so it has appeared to rule you. Tonight we begin another way. Tonight we say, money is a servant, and I, in consciousness, am its master. This is not arrogance. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. For consciousness is God, and God is the only true master. When you accept your identity as consciousness, you do not become a tyrant toward money. You become its rightful director. You no longer fear it, adore it, chase it, or hate it. You place it in its proper place, under your authority, as a useful and obedient instrument. I want you, as you listen, to imagine that we are in a hall together. The lights are low. The noise of the outer world has faded. You sit quietly, and there is nothing between us but the spoken word and the silence in which it moves. I am not speaking to your intellect alone. I am speaking to that deep, eternal center in you, which knows you are not here by accident. You are here because something in you is tired of bowing to numbers. Something in you is ready to remember who you are. Before this journey is over, you will learn to speak to money as if it already obeys you, because in truth, it does. You will learn to treat it not as a judge, but as a messenger, not as a tyrant, but as a tool, not as a distant prize, but as a familiar servant, responding to the tone of your inner being. But before we can speak rightly to money, we must restore the throne to the rightful king. We must put the cause back above the effect, the invisible above the visible, the I am above the I have, or I have not. Tonight, in the depth of your own being, a change of government is about to occur. You have reversed the roles long enough. You have crawled before your own creation long enough. You have allowed the servant to shout and the master to whisper. Now the master will speak again. And as you accept this great reversal, as you accept that money does not command you, but that you command it through your state of consciousness, you will feel something begin to loosen inside you. The fear will not vanish in an instant, but it will begin to lose its throne. A new possibility will arise, the possibility that you are not a victim of how things are, but the author of how things shall be. Remember this phrase, for it is the theme of all that follows. You have reversed the roles, now we will set them right. Money will be shown to you, in the chapters ahead, as what it truly is. Your own self pushed out, clothed in notes and coins and figures and forms. And when you know that what you face is only yourself in another garment, you will no longer fear to speak, and to speak with authority. For the word that moves money is not out there in the marketplace. It is the quiet word spoken within you. I am. You ask, why speak to money? Why speak to something that appears silent, mechanical, indifferent, nothing more than numbers on paper or metal in the hand? I tell you this, you have always been speaking to money, only you have done so unknowingly, and in the wrong tongue. You speak to money with your fears, you speak to money with your doubts, you speak to money with your inner confession of lack, and money, having no will of its own, simply obeys. It returns to you not what you wish, but what you assume, not what you desire, but what you are in consciousness. That which you feel yourself to be inwardly, you cannot escape outwardly. For the world you walk through each day is nothing more than the embodied echo of your inner speech. The scriptures tell us, by thy words thou art justified, and by thy words thou art condemned. Most imagine that this refers to spoken language. It does not. It refers to that steady stream of silent conversation which flows unceasingly within you, shaping the forms of your experience long before they solidify into fact. Let me make this very clear. The word is not a sound. The word is a state. When I say speak to money, I do not mean utter phrases with your lips, though words may accompany the act. I mean assume a state of consciousness in which money is your instrument and not your master. The true speech is feeling. The true decree is assumption. When you silently think, I never have enough, you have spoken. When you murmur inwardly, money is hard to hold on to, you have spoken. When you sigh in resignation, it always goes before it comes, you have spoken. And the law, being impartial, answers, very well, let it be so. You ask why money responds. It does not respond as a living creature, but as a mirror. It has no intelligence of its own. It reflects only the impression left upon consciousness. Money has no ears to hear your words, but it has a nature to obey your inner state. It is not alive, yet it behaves as though it were, because it is the shadow cast by that which is alive, you. The world teaches that money is an external force, that it circulates vaguely through nations, institutions, and hands, choosing some and abandoning others. This is superstition. Money has no agency. It is a servant of assumption. When you stand in the state of one who already possesses, the outer world hastens to make it true. When you stand in the state of one who lacks, the outer world constructs conditions to confirm your belief. To him that hath, more shall be given. To him that hath not, even that which he hath shall be taken away. This sounds cruel, until you understand that having and not having refer not to possessions, but to consciousness. One may have millions and live in the consciousness of lack. One may have nothing and live in the consciousness of abundance. What matters is the inner speech. You may ask, but how can money respond to thought? Because money, like everything perceived, is a manifestation of mind. The coin in the hand and the figure on the ledger are coagulated imagination. They are consciousness objectified. Do you remember the words, "And God said, let there be"? Creation did not begin with sound, but with consciousness becoming aware of itself as that which it desired to express. Speech in Scripture symbolizes assumption. So when I instruct you to speak to money, I am truly saying, assume the state in which money is your obedient servant. Assume the state in which wealth is natural to you. Assume the state and remain there. Let me give you an illustration. A woman once came to me burdened with financial fear. She spoke much about money, complaints, worry, arguments with herself. I told her, "You are speaking perfectly. You are merely speaking the wrong language." I instructed her to stop addressing money as though it were fleeing from her, and instead speak as one whom money follows. For 30 days, she changed nothing in the outer world. No new job, no new accounts, no visible shift, but she changed her inner speech. She said within herself, gently, persistently, "Money serves me, money flows to me, money answers when I call," not as a desperate chant, but as a state of being. Before the month ended, she wrote that her employer had unexpectedly offered her a promotion, one she had not requested and had long ago assumed was impossible. She had not attracted the new income, she had become the one for whom such an offer was obvious. Do you see the difference? The change did not come because she repeated phrases, but because she changed states. The words were only the garment of a deeper realization. She was no longer the one who lacked. Your inner speech is the law, not the external laws of economies, not market conditions, not the opinions of men. The law governing your wealth is the conversation you hold with yourself in the silence of your being. And until you master that speech, you will be like a man shouting commands into the wind, while whispering confessions of defeat under his breath. The wind hears only the whisper. So tonight we begin, not by shouting at the world, but by speaking to the depths of consciousness, saying, "I am the one money obeys," not by force, but by nature. For the master does not plead, nor negotiate, nor persuade. The master assumes, and the servant carries out the order. Listen closely, for here we enter the heart of the matter. There is a law that governs every event in your life, subtle, silent, impartial, and whether you know it or not, you have been using it from the moment you first became aware of yourself. I have spoken of this law for many years, in halls filled with men and women who believed themselves victims of circumstance, limited by external conditions, prisoners of what they called reality. That law is the law of assumption. It states simply, what you assume to be true in consciousness, you will outpicture in the world. This is not poetry. It is not philosophy. It is not morality. It is mechanics. You do not attract what you want. You do not attract what you beg for. You attract and must attract what you are in consciousness. The outer world is nothing more than the shadow cast by your inner state. Every event, every circumstance, every dollar gained or lost is the echo of an assumption held deeply, persistently, often unconsciously. You may look at your purse, your wages, your accounts, and say, "This is factual, this is real, this is simply the truth." But I tell you, what you call truth is nothing more than a photograph of your past assumptions. It is the world catching up to the self you have been silently declaring yourself to be. Money does not shape your state shapes money. When you stand in the state of "I am broke," the world obeys. When you stand in the state of "I am sustained," the world obeys. When you stand in the state of "I am wealthy," the world obeys. Not because the world is listening to your words, but because the world is your words clothed in form. Let us go deeper. Money itself has no nature. It is neutral, purely responsive. It is not the source of power, but the shadow of power. Think of a tree standing in the sun. The tree is the consciousness. The shadow on the ground is money. You may chase the shadow, move the shadow, grab at the shadow with your hands, but until you change the position of the tree, the shadow remains the same. Most of mankind lives in the absurd effort of rearranging shadows. They change jobs, change banks, change countries, change strategies, change investments, yet remain inwardly the same man, holding the same assumptions of limitation, fear, unworthiness, scarcity. And so they find that no matter how far they travel or how hard they labor, the shadow reforms itself again and again, faithfully reflecting the one who casts it. You must change the tree, not the shadow. You must change the consciousness, not the currency. This is why I say, money is consciousness wearing the mask of matter. You say, "I want to manifest money." I say, "Become the one who already possesses it." You say, "I am trying to move toward wealth." I say, "Feel from wealth, not toward it." Do you see the difference? To desire from the standpoint of not having is to perpetuate lack. You may long, you may pray, you may visualize, but if beneath every effort lies the feeling, "I am not yet," then you are assuming lack, and lack must continue. The state you seek cannot be approached. It must be inhabited. You must begin now to think, feel, speak, and act from the place your desire implies. If you had wealth, if it were natural to you, unquestioned, secure, how would you walk? How would you breathe? How would you answer a bill? How would you respond to a sudden expense? How would you sit in the quiet moments of your day? Would you shrink? Would you fear? Would you fear? Would you calculate nervously? Or would you stand with that quiet ease that belongs only to those who know? This is the law. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the only creative act. Not the effort to obtain the wish, not the struggle to deserve the wish, not the hope of someday achieving the wish. You must enter the wish now, while the world still denies it. When you assume wealth, not as a fantasy, not as a daydream, but as the truest fact of your being, the world begins to reorganize itself around your assumption. People will behave differently toward you. Opportunities will appear that never existed before. Circumstances, once closed, will open as though compelled by an unseen hand. You will feel guided, carried, accompanied. It will appear as though wealth is coming to you, but it is not coming. It is revealing itself from within you. For all creation is finished. All possibilities already exist in consciousness. You do not create abundance, you select it. You do not earn wealth, you embody it. You do not manifest money, you assume the state from which money must flow. And until that assumption changes, nothing changes. The world is a mirror, and it reflects not your wishes, but your conviction, not your pleas, but your nature, not what you think you deserve, but what you are in the silence of your being. Do not try to walk toward wealth. Do not try to climb to it, chase it, wait for it. Stand where wealth stands. Stand in consciousness as the one to whom money flows naturally, as a river flows downhill, not because the river loves the mountain, but because it must obey the law of its nature. So it is with money. When you assume, with feeling, "I am wealthy," you do not merely speak a phrase, you alter the very structure of consciousness. And the world, being nothing but consciousness objectified, must change its shape to conform. This is the law of assumption. This is the law by which kings rule, prophets create, and ordinary men rise overnight to positions no logic could predict. Do not approach wealth occupy it. Very well, let us go deeper. You have been conditioned to believe that money exists outside of you, that it occupies a realm of banks, employers, markets, institutions, governments, that it circulates independently of your being, and that you must somehow earn your way into its current, as one swims into a river. This belief is the very root of struggle, for whatever you deem external, you cannot command. Whatever you believe to be independent of your consciousness must, by that belief, appear beyond your reach, beyond your authority, beyond your authorship. And so long as you hold money as something out there, you will continue to speak to it as a servant speaks to a master, timidly, conditionally, reverently, fearfully. But I tell you tonight something radical, and if you accept it, not as an idea, but as truth, you will never again experience money in the same way. Money is not external. Money is you, pushed out. It is consciousness clothed in the garment of form. It is not a force acting upon you. It is your own state of being reflected back to you. Money is the echo of the assumptions you have entertained about yourself, your worthiness, your identity, your power. Money is consciousness wearing the mask of currency. When you see a figure on a page, you are not seeing a fact. You are beholding the embodied memory of a former state of consciousness. It is the fossil of an assumption now past. It has no life except the life you continue to give it through attention and belief. You imagine that money lies in vaults, in numbered accounts, in the pockets of other men. But where did those accounts emerge? Where did those opportunities originate? From what invisible depth did those transactions arise? Everything begins in consciousness. Before any contract was signed, before any wage was offered, before any coin passed through hands, someone assumed an identity, someone accepted a state. Only then did the world arrange itself to give form to that assumption. The world is an obedient servant. It does not create, it reveals. Let me illustrate. Two men stand before the same economy. One flourishes, the other falls. One sees opportunities where the other sees obstacles. One receives unexpected assistance, while the other meets resistance at every turn. Do you believe they live in different worlds? No, they inhabit different states of consciousness, and the world obeys the state. The external world is not neutral matter. It is psychological substance. It molds itself to the one who perceives it. Your experience of wealth or lack is not determined by conditions, but by the consciousness that interprets and thereby creates those conditions. You say, money is scarce. No, your consciousness of lack projects scarcity onto the world. You say, money is difficult to obtain. No, your belief in difficulty arranges events to justify itself. You say, some people are blessed with wealth. No, some people unconsciously assume wealth as natural. There is no unknown force distributing fortune unevenly across mankind. There is only consciousness unfolding according to its self-concept. When you see money as external, you attempt to manipulate effects rather than causes. You try to change the shadow without turning the body that casts it. You fret over wages, taxes, investments, markets, all the while carrying within yourself the assumption that created the very conditions you now seek to escape. The world is not the obstacle, it is the mirror. If you face the mirror with a frown, what do you gain by trying to alter the glass? Change the face, and the reflection must follow. So it is with money. People spend decades trying to alter the reflection while refusing to alter the one principle that determines it, their state of being. A poor man given riches without changing consciousness soon returns to poverty. A wealthy man stripped of all possessions soon finds riches again. Why? Because money was never the cause, only the effect. Remove the effect, and the cause produces it again. Remove the cause, and no effort can preserve the effect. You must therefore cease treating money as a foreign entity with its own agenda. Treat it as what it truly is, your consciousness in liquid form. Money in your life acts out the role you have assigned it. Some treat money as a tyrant, and money obliges by ruling them. Some treat money as a distant deity, and money obliges by remaining distant. Some treat money as a fleeting visitor, and money obliges by appearing briefly and vanishing quickly. Few treat money as a familiar servant, loyal, dependable, obedient to command. And fewer still treat money as part of their own being, as circulation of their own power, like breath, like blood, like thought. Yet those who do discover that money moves toward them with ease, not because money loves them, but because they no longer hold themselves apart from it. When you say inwardly, "I need money," you declare separation. When you say, "I lack money," you confirm absence. When you say, "I must get money," you confess distance between you and that which you seek. But when you say, with quiet certainty, "Money is an expression of my consciousness, it belongs to me by nature," you dissolve the illusion of separation. There is no distance for money to travel. It flows from within outwards. Let us go further, for the mind rebels against this teaching. You may say, "But money clearly exists outside of me. I can hold it, spend it, see it." You can also see your reflection in a mirror and hold the glass, yet the reflection is not external to you in origin. It is your own form pushed outward. If you were removed, the reflection would vanish. If consciousness withdrew, money would disappear. When you leave this body, you cannot take money with you, not because heaven forbids it, but because money has no existence apart from mind. It belongs to the dream, and the dream belongs to you. Thus I urge you, stop treating money as though it possesses life of its own. It has no voice, but the voice you give it. It goes where you assume it should go. It departs when you assume it must depart. It returns when you assume yourself to be the one to whom it must return. Money is a servant, but it is a servant that reflects the dignity of its master. A king may sit on the throne and receive tribute from every corner of the realm. Yet if he forgets his royalty and takes on the garb of a beggar, even his own servants will pass him in the street without recognition. They obey the appearance he gives himself. So too with money. If you approach money as a beggar, it answers you accordingly. If you approach it as master, it obeys. And if you approach it as self, it moves without resistance, because there is no longer division within the kingdom of consciousness. Do not merely say these words, feel them. Feel money not as something you seek, but as something that proceeds from you, like breath from lungs, like light from flame. Feel that it is natural to you, appropriate to you, inevitable to you. Feel that it belongs where you are, because it is born of the state you occupy. When this becomes natural, when wealth ceases to be a goal and becomes a definition of self, the world will bend to that definition with the same faithfulness. It once bent to your fears. For what you are within, you must behold without. Money is not coming. Money is emerging from the only place it ever existed, your consciousness. And when you truly know this, not intellectually, but as a living fact, you will stop asking how to make money and begin asking how to be the version of yourself for whom money is already an expression of being. For the answer to every financial question is not in the world, it is in who you are. There is a truth I have repeated throughout my lifetime, yet most overlook its implication. You are not manifesting money, you are manifesting the one who has money. Every outward expression is nothing more than the embodiment of an inward identity. You think you desire money, but what you truly seek is the state of the one who possesses money. Ease, confidence, freedom, dignity, choice. These qualities do not come after wealth. They precede it. They produce it. This is why I emphasize inner speech. For inner speech is not merely thought, it is identity spoken into being. Every time you speak inwardly, you declare who you are. And money responds not to your words, but to the one speaking them. If the inner speaker is a beggar, his commands will sound like pleading. If the inner speaker is a victim, his decrees will be filled with fear. If the inner speaker is a master, his words carry authority. So I ask you now, not rhetorically, but as the central question upon which your entire financial life turns, who are you in consciousness when you speak to money? Do you speak as one seeking assistance? Please come, I need you. I hope another payment arrives. I don't know how I'll manage. These are not statements. They are confessions of identity. Or do you speak as one oppressed by circumstance? Everything is getting worse. Life is unfair. I can't keep up with expenses. This is not reporting facts. It is creating tomorrow's balance. But now imagine another identity. A man sits in quiet confidence. His accounts abundant. His needs met before they arise. When he speaks inwardly, even casually, his tone is not one of pursuit, but possession. I always have more than enough. My wealth increases without effort. Money flows to me as naturally as breath. His words do not request, they reveal. He is not becoming wealthy, he is wealthy, and the world merely catches up to what he already knows himself to be. You may say, but I cannot speak this way, for it is not true. I tell you, it is not true yet, because you have refused to speak from the truth. Truth does not wait for evidence. Evidence waits for truth. Consciousness is the cause. Circumstances are the echo. When you speak as the wealthy one, you do not speak about future attainment. You speak from present identity. This shift of inner speech is not decoration of thought. It is the very mechanism of creation. Let me offer examples. For some learn best through testimony. A man who spoke as a master. A gentleman once came to me troubled by constant financial struggle. He had read every book on prosperity, practiced affirmations, even kept meticulous budgets. Yet nothing changed. I asked him to reveal his inner speech. He confessed that every time he opened his wallet, a phrase arose almost involuntarily: I never have enough. Why is it always like this? These words became his master. He bowed before them every day. They ruled his state of being, and his world obeyed accordingly. I instructed him to change nothing externally. No new job, no budgeting system, no effort to earn more. I told him only this: when you open your wallet, speak as the one who has, not loudly, not theatrically, but from identity. His new inner speech became money obeys me. I always have what I need, more than enough. He said this silently, not to persuade himself, but to declare who he now was. Within weeks he was offered additional income from an unexpected source. Within months, his finances were unrecognizable. Did the words create the money? No, the new identity did. The words merely revealed it. A woman whose inner speech was disguised fear. Another student, a woman of good heart and strong discipline, insisted she was faithful to her imaginal acts, yet remained in scarcity. When I asked her to describe her inner speech, she revealed a phrase that had followed her since childhood: I must be careful, money disappears. She did not realize this was a decree. She had assumed the identity of one who loses money, one who must clutch and guard it, lest it slip away. Thus every financial blessing arrived only long enough to fulfill her assumption, and then departed. I instructed her not to imagine wealth, but to imagine security, to speak inwardly as one who is eternally supported. Money stays with me. Money multiplies under my care. Money is safe in my hands. Soon opportunities stopped vanishing. Income no longer dissolved as quickly as it came. She became not merely prosperous, but stable. Identity precedes experience. A man given wealth without changing identity loses it. A man with wealth consciousness gains wealth even when deprived of it. It is not the bank account that matters, but the one who speaks to it. For inner speech is not commentary, it is command. It does not describe life, it constructs it. You say, but I speak prosperity and nothing happens. I answer, you speak prosperity as a poor man, hoping. Speak as the one who already is, and the world will bow to your voice. Do not beg, do not request, do not affirm without embodiment. Speak as the author of wealth, not the seeker of it. For money does not obey words, it obeys the consciousness from which they arise. There is a sacred doorway through which every manifestation must pass, a threshold where the conscious and subconscious mingle, where the outer world loosens its grip and the inner world takes command. I have called this state a state akin to sleep, not sleep itself, but the soft, drifting edge before sleep claims you. In that delicate interval, imagination replaces effort and assumption enters the womb of creation. Most men attempt to manifest while fully awake, while their senses are loud, and their rational mind insists upon the evidence of lack. They sit at desks, calculating, worrying, forcing their imaginations into rigid shapes, while still being fully conscious of the very conditions they seek to escape. This is why their efforts fail. They attempt to plant seeds in frozen soil. But when you approach the edge of sleep, your senses withdraw. The world of facts grows dim, and your imagination becomes the only reality. What you feel in that state is impressed upon the subconscious with immeasurable force. The subconscious is not creative on its own. It accepts the impressions given to it and externalizes them faithfully, impersonally, inevitably. If you would transform your financial world, you must speak to money when the doors of consciousness are open. This is why I instruct you, not merely to visualize money, but to become the one who already possesses it. The state, akin to sleep, is not a theater in which you watch wealth appear. It is the throne upon which you assume wealth as identity. Do not visualize piles of money, that is to watch money from a distance, as a spectator. Instead, assume the state of the wealthy one. Feel yourself to be him. Feel the ease, the security, the calm dominance that such a state implies. Money is not the scene, it is the atmosphere. Before sleep, lie in your bed and allow your body to grow heavy, your breathing soft, your eyelids slow. Do not attempt to force imagination. Allow it to rise naturally from the stillness. Then, just as you are drifting, enact a scene so simple, so natural, that it could occur tonight. Do not imagine winning a lottery or stumbling into fortune. That is fantasy. Imagine a mundane moment from the perspective of wealth, handing a bill to a waiter without counting change, writing a check with confidence, speaking with ease about plans already funded. Choose a scene brief enough to repeat and repeat until it feels like memory rather than imagination. A simple scene is best. Perhaps you sit at your kitchen table, the soft glow of morning filtering through the curtains, holding a letter, confirming your accounts are overflowing. You do not stare at numbers. You feel the relief, the quiet dignity. You know that money is abundant because you are abundant. In this state, you do not hope. You remember. If your imagination wanders, bring it gently back, not with strain but with devotion. Let the scene play again, not as a movie but as an experience. Feel the texture of the paper, the weight of the chair beneath you, the rhythm of your breath. Allow gratitude to rise as naturally as warmth rises from flame. At this stage, there will come a moment where the scene feels done. You will feel the desire relax, as though nothing is missing. When that sensation comes, let sleep take you. In that instant, the seed has been planted. You have impressed the subconscious with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Most will ask, how many nights must I do this? I answer, as many as it takes, until the feeling becomes natural. Not repetition in number, but repetition in conviction. There will be nights when doubts arise, voices whispering, this is not real, you're pretending, your circumstances prove otherwise. Do not fight these thoughts. They have no power unless you grant them authority. Return to the feeling when fear speaks. Do not argue, replace it with identity. Say inwardly, not as affirmation, but as fact, I am the one who has. If you fall asleep in fear, you will wake in fear. If you fall asleep in wealth, the world will move to justify your wealth. What enters the subconscious in drowsiness is born into form. Do not chase results in daylight. Protect the state in the night. The day reflects the seed planted in the darkness. For the world is shaped while you sleep. Be mindful too that this work is not performance. If you force the scene, you will remain separate from it. If you strain to feel wealthy, you confess that you are not. The state must be assumed as lightly as slipping into a familiar garment. The wealthy man does not try to feel wealthy. He simply is. In this ritual, you rehearse that being until it becomes your nature. When the state is natural, the manifestation is near. You will know the shift has occurred, not when money appears, but when your inner tone changes. The world will feel safe. Bills will no longer threaten. You will act without hesitation. You will give without fear. You will no longer ask, how will money come? For such a question belongs to one who lacks. The wealthy one does not wonder how. He wonders what to do with the abundance already his. If you perform this sacred work faithfully, the world will rearrange itself to honor your assumption. Opportunities will appear that you could not foresee. Men will call you with offers you did not seek. Sources of income will arise from directions you never considered. These are not miracles, they are the reflection of a changed self. Money comes not because you visualized it, but because you became the one to whom money must come. This is the purpose of the state akin to sleep, not to manipulate the world, but to rebirth yourself. For the world obeys identity, and identity is written in the night. You have heard me say that money is not a force outside of you, but your own consciousness objectified. If this is true, and I assure you it is, then speaking to money is not a strange ritual. It is simply speaking to a part of yourself that has been forgotten, neglected, misunderstood. But you must know how to speak to it. Most speak to money either with anxiety, resentment, or reverence. All of these place money above the speaker. You must speak as master, not servant, not with arrogance, but with calm authority, the tone of one addressing what already belongs to him. Before I give you the dialogues, understand this. It is not the words that matter. It is the state from which the words arise. A poor man may speak rich words, but life hears the poor man. A wealthy man may speak casually, even modestly, yet his world expands, for the world hears his state. When I instruct you to speak to money, I am not asking you to recite affirmations. I am asking you to step into identity, to speak as the one for whom money is an extension of being. Let us begin. When you speak to money, do not speak toward it as though summoning something distant. Speak from it, from the feeling that money is already within your sphere of command. Sit down, close your eyes, and breathe slowly until the body is still. Let the tension fall away, for anxiety is the language of lack. Then, inwardly, quietly, naturally, begin to speak. Not as one negotiating, not as one pleading, but as one issuing instruction. For example, you may say, "Money, I do not chase you. You belong to me by right of consciousness. You move where I direct, because you are mine, in essence." Let the words be steady, not loud. Authority requires no force. Then speak with intimacy, as one addresses a trusted servant. Go forth and return multiplied. Wherever I send you, you prosper me. Wherever I invest you, you expand. Do not speak with strain. Speak as the one who expects obedience. Another dialogue might be, "You are not scarce. You are abundant in every corner of my world. You flow through banks, through men, through opportunities, and you return to me with ease." See how this differs from affirmations of desire. You are not asking to receive. You are acknowledging what already is. Now speak with the tone of one giving assignment. "Money, you go now into new channels. You open doors I have not yet seen. You bring to me relationships, contracts, and opportunities that match my identity." Let me give you a more intimate example, as some of you respond better when emotion is involved. "Money, I have misunderstood you. I have feared you, grasped at you, distrusted you. But tonight, I see you rightly. You are my own consciousness in motion. We are one." Pause after these words and feel the unity, not symbolic unity, but actual oneness. Money is not an object you hold. It is you, wearing form. Once that unity is felt, speak as though addressing your own reflection. "You do not leave me. You do not abandon me. You stay, you grow, you remain in my world, because I remain in the state of abundance." If your mind protests, if old beliefs arise, do not argue with them. Speak again, gently, as though soothing a child. "I am not the one who lacks. I am the one who has." Now let us go further. Let us speak to money, as though speaking to a loyal companion. "You are not a visitor in my life. You are a resident. You dwell with me, not temporarily, but permanently." Feel this not as hope, but as memory. You can also speak with command, as a king to his domain. "I call you forth now in larger measure. You move toward me from every direction. You obey the nature of my being, and my being is abundance." These words must not be shouted. A king does not shout to be obeyed. He simply speaks, and obedience follows. Now I will give you a final form of dialogue, one spoken not to money, but as money. For the highest authority is not speaking to, but speaking as the thing itself. When you speak as money, consciousness merges completely, and separation dissolves. Listen to this voice. "I flow because I am alive. I seek those who know they are my source. I multiply where I am welcomed. I am ease. I am movement. I am abundance itself." Now say, "I am money in circulation. I am abundance made visible. I am the wealth that returns wherever I reside." When you speak this way, there is no you and money. There is only consciousness expressing itself through form. This is the highest level of command. Not speaking toward money, not speaking over money, but speaking as the essence from which money arises. That is the point of mastery, for the world does not give wealth to you. It gives wealth because you are wealth. And the moment you speak from that state, reality has no choice but to conform. Money does not hear your words. Money hears the one who speaks. So speak tonight, not as one who hopes, not as one who waits, but as one who is. Money already obeys you. Now obey your own identity. It is not enough to speak to money as though giving instruction. The deeper transformation occurs when you begin to speak from the state of the one who already possesses wealth. This is a shift so subtle that many overlook it, yet it is the true hinge upon which manifestation swings. To speak as one who is rather than one who hopes to have is to move from desire into identity. Desire says, I want. Identity says, I am. The world does not respond to what you want, nor what you say you intend, nor what you convince yourself you deserve. The world responds to what you are in consciousness, and your speech reveals your state more honestly than any claim you make. When I say speak from wealth, I do not mean speak boastfully or with outward demonstration. The rich man does not need to declare his wealth. He simply moves through the world with a quiet certainty, for the world already conforms to his state. It is the poor man who proclaims abundance loudly, for he speaks to cover his disbelief. Therefore, listen to the way you speak when no one is watching. That is the true barometer of your identity. If, upon seeing a bill, you say within yourself, how will I pay this? You have revealed your state. If, upon wanting something, you say, I must wait until I can afford it, you have revealed your state. If you say money goes as quickly as it comes, you have revealed your state. These phrases, seemingly small, are the liturgy of lack. Replace them with the quiet, effortless tone of one who has there is more than enough. Money flows because I command movement. Everything I require is already provided for, not spoken forcefully, but naturally. Now I will show you how to speak from the end, as the man who already possesses abundance. Let us imagine you wake in the morning. The average man rises and immediately measures himself against circumstance. He recalls what is due, what is lacking, what must be earned. He anchors himself to yesterday's consciousness and thus repeats yesterday's world. But the awakened man, the man who knows the law, begins his day by assuming identity rather than reacting to reality. He says silently, I rise today as one who is already provided for. All that concerns me is settled. I move through this day as one whose wealth precedes his footsteps. He does not wait for evidence. He speaks from the state he has chosen. Now imagine you walk through town and see something desirable, a coat, a meal, a home. The habitual reaction is longing, comparison, calculation. The awakened reaction is possession in consciousness. You may say inwardly, I enjoy what I desire, because I desire from fullness, not lack, not someday, not when the money comes, but now, as though you were remembering rather than wishing. If you wish to truly transform your world, begin speaking as though the event has already passed. For example, that transaction was simple and swift. That opportunity presented itself with ease. I received the payment sooner than expected. Notice the tense, past, not future. Creation is finished when assumed. Now let us turn inward. There are moments in each day where one speaks silently to oneself. And these moments are the forge of destiny. It is here that the real work is done. Not at the desk, not in the marketplace, not in conversation, but in the silent corridors of the mind. When you walk, speak as the wealthy walk. Everything unfolds in my favor. The world knows me as abundance embodied. Money is ever at hand, responding before I even ask. When you eat, speak from ease. I dine as one whose table is always full. When you plan, I choose from freedom, not limitation. When you give money, returns multiplied, for I give from surplus. All day long, speak from the fulfillment of the wish, until the state no longer needs speech, because it has become your nature. Let me now give you practical examples in flowing conversational tone. Not affirmations, but internal dialogue, spoken as you move through life. As you receive a bill, this is already accounted for. My supply preceded the demand. As you consider a purchase, I spend without fear, because I am rooted in abundance. As you think of your future, my wealth grows in silence, like fruit on the vine. As you reflect at night, I have been well cared for today, and tomorrow arrives with even greater provision. Do you see the pattern? There is no strain, no force, no attempting to convince. The speech arises naturally from the state of the one who has. The goal is not to speak richly. The goal is to be rich in consciousness, and speech will follow effortlessly. When speech becomes effortless, you will know the state is yours, and the moment the state is yours, the world begins to reshape itself to match your assumption. Your bank account does not change first. Your identity does. And once identity shifts, the numbers must follow like a shadow. So begin tonight. Do not speak about wealth. Do not speak toward wealth. Speak from wealth. Let your words be the evidence of your new being. For when you speak as the one who already possesses abundance, you cease trying to become wealthy. You simply are, and the world bows to that truth. You must understand that what you call debt is not an enemy, nor a punishment, nor a burden imposed upon you by forces outside yourself. Debt is merely the residue of a former state of consciousness, a shadow cast by an identity you no longer inhabit. It is the physical echo of assumptions long abandoned, and like any echo, it fades when the new sound overtakes it. Most people attempt to escape debt by fearing it, resisting it, resenting it, or avoiding interaction with it altogether. They treat debt as a tyrant and themselves as its captive. They speak of it with dread, as though it held some power over their future. Yet nothing in this world possesses power except that which consciousness grants it. If you fear debt, you animate it. If you avoid it, you affirm its dominance. If you curse it, you bind yourself to the state that created it. You must not run from debt. You must dissolve it. And you dissolve it by speaking to it as the master speaks to the servant. Not with force, not with desperation, but with calm authority. For debt is not a force acting upon you. It is merely a message reflecting who you once believed yourself to be. When you receive a message from the past, you do not answer it as though it still carries relevance. You acknowledge its origin and then respond from who you are now, not who you were then. Before you address debt, first locate your inner stance. Are you speaking as one oppressed or one who commands? Are you speaking as the debtor or as the fulfilled one? If you speak while trembling, debt remains your master. If you speak from the throne of abundance, debt dissolves like mist before the rising sun. When I encountered men burdened by obligations they felt powerless to meet, I taught them not to demand relief, but to speak to debt as one who already stands beyond it. Begin by acknowledging debt without emotional entanglement. Do not pretend it does not exist, for denial is not mastery. It is merely another form of fear. Look directly at it in consciousness and speak as one who transcends it. You are the shadow of an identity I no longer occupy. You came as a teacher, and your lesson has been learned. You do not limit me. You reveal how powerful I now am. Then speak to debt as though addressing a friend who served you during a time of transition. I thank you for appearing when I believed I lacked. You reflected my old state faithfully, but I have outgrown that garment, and you may now return to the void from which all forms arise. In this attitude of gratitude, debt loses its sting. The tone shifts from resentment to reverence, for everything in your world is yourself pushed out, including what you call lack. Now speak a new command, not from struggle, but from fulfilled identity. You are resolved. You are settled. Your purpose is complete. You dissolve quietly and in perfect order, without strain. All accounts are balanced in divine harmony. Notice what I do not instruct you to say. I do not ask you to say, I will pay this off, for that implies effort, distance, and a future fulfillment that never arrives. Instead, speak as one who has already fulfilled the obligation in consciousness. This is already cleared. I stand in the state where nothing is owed. I dwell in divine settlement. Debt is not erased by striving to earn enough to eliminate it. It is erased when consciousness no longer supports its existence. The external settlement will follow. Some insist that debt must be eliminated by toil. They speak as though the outer world acts independently of inner assumption. These men believe that obligations are chains binding them to conditions they did not choose. But I tell you, debt leaves easily, for the man who no longer identifies as one who owes. If you must send payment, send it not with worry, but with authority. Take this as a token of completion, not as payment from insufficiency. The difference is subtle, but profound. When you act as one striving to repay, you reinforce the identity of debt. When you act as one who ties loose ends of a past state, you close the chapter. Now allow me to provide conversations you may hold silently when interacting with debt. These are not affirmations. They are dialogues that arise naturally from the new state of consciousness. When you open a bill, thank you for serving a chapter that has ended. You are fulfilled. When a creditor contacts you, you reflect an old version of me, and I bless you for your role. All accounts are balanced now. When you think of your financial past, I bless my former assumptions, for they led me to this awakening. When you feel anxiety, all things return to harmony. Nothing opposes me. I am the one who commands. Debt dissolves not through panic, nor strategy, nor avoidance. It dissolves when you cease to speak from the identity that produced it. The moment you assume the state of the one who owes nothing, the world begins to rearrange itself to express that truth. Opportunities arise, agreements shift, balances disappear in unexpected ways. Obligations restructure without struggle, and often the debt vanishes through channels that cannot be traced logically. Grace replaces effort, closure replaces pressure, completion replaces fear. The world always aligns with who you are in consciousness, never who you wish to be. So speak to debt, not as a beggar addressing a judge, but as consciousness addressing its own shadow. You served your purpose. You may go now. And as you release debt with honor rather than resistance, you step into the identity of one who walks unburdened, not because the world has changed first, but because you have. Over the years of teaching this law, countless men and women have written to me, not merely to express gratitude, though many did, but to testify to the power that comes from speaking to money as though it already obeys them. These stories are precious to me, not because they prove the law, for the law requires no proof, but because they reveal the beauty of consciousness awakening to itself. Let me begin with a gentleman who, when he first attended my lecture, considered himself a practical man, a man of figures and reason. He was a businessman whose life revolved around ledgers, balances, and calculated risks. He believed money to be a force governed by markets, clients, and economic tides. He attended my talk merely out of curiosity, invited by a friend. He confessed to me later that he found my words unsettling, not because they were unreasonable, but because they contradicted the very foundation upon which he had built his identity. He was accustomed to controlling money through effort, negotiation, and strategy. The idea that money responded to inner speech rather than external action seemed preposterous. Yet something lingered in him, a seed planted by irritation rather than admiration. Months passed, and circumstances forced him to confront a truth he could no longer ignore. His business began to decline, not through mismanagement, but through forces that appeared beyond his control. Clients withdrew, contracts dissolved, opportunities vanished. He felt stripped of security. One night, in this state of desperation, he remembered my words, "Money is consciousness wearing the mask of currency." And for the first time, he dared to speak to money as though it were a friend rather than an adversary. He addressed it quietly in his room. "You are not leaving me. You are responding to what I have assumed myself to be. I have spoken as a man uncertain, and you have obeyed, but I am now the one who commands. Return to me in perfect order." He began each morning speaking to money, not as one pleading for relief, but as one already in possession. He spoke to his business accounts at night, saying, "You serve me. You expand through me. You rise because I rise." Within weeks, an opportunity appeared, a partnership offer from a firm he had once considered far beyond his reach. It came not by searching, but by invitation. He entered the partnership, and within 1 year wrote to me, saying, "I did not return to my former level of success. I exceeded it. My accounts no longer intimidate me. I speak, and they respond." He ended his letter with a sentence I cherish. "I did not attract money. I began commanding my own reflection." Now let me share the story of a young woman who had nothing at least by outward measure. She worked a modest job, lived in a small rented room, and often skipped meals to pay for transportation. She had no savings, no family inheritance, no opportunities waiting to reveal themselves. When she came to me, she said, "Neville, I do not seek luxury. I only want to live without the constant fear of tomorrow." I told her gently that fear itself was the architect of her tomorrow. "Right. You do not fear your circumstances," I said. "Your circumstances are the shadow of fear." I asked her not to visualize riches, but to speak to money as one who was already provided for. She protested, "But how can I speak as though I have, when I have nothing?" I replied, "You have consciousness, and that is everything." I instructed her to speak each night before sleep. "Money, you come to me with ease. I do not chase you. You arrive as a faithful companion. You find me because I am the one who has." She persisted, not merely repeating words, but speaking them from a rising sense of dignity she had never known. 1 month passed with no change. 2 months passed with little sign. But in the third month, a distant relative, a woman she had met only twice in her childhood, passed away and left her a small inheritance. The amount was not extraordinary, but it liberated her from survival. She wrote to me saying, "It felt as though the universe had been waiting for me to stop begging and start receiving." And she concluded with a deeper realization: my inheritance was not the money. My inheritance was the identity that called it forth. Now I shall speak of a man afflicted by debt so overwhelming he lived in constant dread of the postman. Each letter brought new demands, new threats, new reminders of his perceived failure. He told me he would open envelopes trembling, whispering, "Not another one, I cannot bear it." I said to him, "It is not the letters that torment you, but the man you believe yourself to be when you open them." I instructed him to bless every letter, even notices demanding payment. I told him to say, as he held them, "You come from an old version of myself. I receive you with understanding, but I do not continue you. Thank you, and goodbye." Weeks later, he wrote with astonishment. Debt collectors stopped calling. Payment plans were renegotiated without resistance. One creditor canceled the balance entirely, saying they had reviewed the case and found no reason to pursue it further. He added, "It was as though the world forgot I owed anything at all." But he understood the law well enough to write the greater truth. "They forgot because I forgot the man who owed it." Another story comes from a widow in Los Angeles. Her husband passed suddenly, leaving her with only modest savings and no income of her own. Her relatives urged her to be practical, to reduce her living standards, to accept a simpler life. Yet she refused inwardly to assume the state of one diminished. She attended one of my meetings and heard me say, "Live in the end, not toward it." She went home and began speaking to money as though it loved her. She said, "You flow to me because I am abundance itself. I am not sustained by a person. I am sustained by the law." Soon after, a legal representative contacted her with news. Her late husband had a pension fund she had not been aware of, and she would receive payments monthly indefinitely. That alone restored her stability, but something more remarkable occurred. A friend offered her a position as an advisor for a charitable foundation, believing her to possess wisdom and refinement. She earned more in 1 year than she had earned in 5 years of her marriage. She concluded her letter with words that brought tears to my eyes. "I thought I had lost my provider. I did not realize I was the provider all along." Let me give you one final testimony, perhaps the most dramatic. A young man, unemployed, written off by his family as irresponsible and hopeless, attended my lecture by chance. He later confessed he came merely to escape the cold. He scoffed at my words, though he stayed until the end. But something touched him. Not the teaching itself, but a sentence: "Speak as the man you desire to be, and the world will rearrange itself to match your tone." That night, instead of collapsing into despair, he sat upright in bed and spoke aloud. "Money, you obey me. Opportunities seek me. I am valuable. I am chosen. I am employed as a man of worth." The next morning, a man he had once done a small favor for approached him on the street and offered him a position as assistant in a small publishing firm. He accepted. Within months, he rose to management. Years later, he wrote to tell me he had purchased the company outright. He said, "One night of speech did more than years of effort. And then, I did not change my life. I changed the man who lived it." What all these stories share is not coincidence, not luck, not fortune, but identity. Money did not come because they asked for it. Money came because they spoke as those to whom money already belonged. For money does not respond to pleading, nor effort, nor striving. Money responds to being. And when you speak from being, creation bends to your tone. There is a principle at the heart of this teaching, which once understood, frees man from all sense of struggle in manifestation. I have spoken it many times in my lectures, yet it is so simple, so quietly powerful, that most overlook it entirely. It is called the law of reversibility. What do I mean by reversibility? I mean that every effect in this world has a corresponding cause in consciousness, and that cause and effect are interchangeable the moment one understands that consciousness is primary and the physical world merely follows. If a feeling is produced by a physical event, that same physical event must be produced by the feeling when assumed and sustained. If receiving money produces relief, then relief, genuinely felt, must bring the money. Most men attempt to create change by laboring with effects. They believe that if they secure the money first, they will finally feel free, secure, relieved. They say, "When I receive the check, then I will relax. When my debts are paid, then I will feel peace. When opportunity comes, then I will feel confident." They wait for the outer world to justify the inner feeling. But the law does not operate in that direction for the awakened man. The outer does not lead the inner. The inner leads the outer. If the money produces relief, then relief is the cause and must bring the money. You need not wait for the world to give you the feeling. You may feel the result now and allow the world to conform. Do not misunderstand me. I am not asking you to pretend. I am asking you to generate the very emotion that accompanies the fulfilled desire, for that emotion is the signature of the state itself. Relief is not merely an emotion you feel when something is accomplished. It is the emotional evidence that the state already exists in consciousness. Man is always reversing the law unconsciously. He receives a small sum of money and breathes a sigh of relief, not realizing that the relief itself could have summoned far greater sums had he assumed it before the money arrived. He lives as though the world has power over him, not knowing that his very reactions betray his creative authority. So let us practice reversibility now. Close your eyes, or simply allow your mind to soften. Your physical surroundings need not vanish. Merely let them lose importance. Imagine yourself holding your bank statement, not as it is, but as it would be if your desire were already fulfilled. Do not force an image. Do not try to construct numbers. Instead, feel the sensation of completion. Ask yourself, what would I feel in my body if everything were already settled? Not, how would I feel if I hoped things might improve? Not, how would I feel if progress were being made? But, how would I feel if all were finished? Let the body answer before the mind speaks. You may notice a loosening in the chest, a softening of the breath, a warmth in the abdomen, a sensation of spaciousness behind the eyes. Perhaps you feel a quiet exhale, the kind that escapes when all tension dissolves at once. That feeling is the signature of financial fulfillment. If you sustain this feeling, the world must express it. Now take it deeper. Imagine nothing changing outwardly in this moment. The bank balance appearing the same, the obligation still present, the letter still unopened, and yet you feel the unmistakable peace of a man whose financial affairs are already in perfect order. Do you see what power that gives you? You are no longer reacting to conditions, you are creating them. Feel now the lightness in your shoulders as though something has been lifted. Feel the quiet assurance that your needs are met. Feel the inward confidence of one who knows provision is inevitable. Do not try to hold an image. Hold the tone. Let this thought arise naturally, as though spoken from within. It is done. Notice that this phrase does not stir excitement, nor anticipation, but calm certainty. That certainty is the state that summons wealth. Now breathe slowly and feel the subtle change that takes place when you cease wanting money and begin possessing it in consciousness. There is a difference between desire and fulfillment. One creates tension, the other ease. Desire is a reaching, a stretching toward a future. Fulfillment is a resting in the present. Hear this clearly. No desire can manifest while you remain in the state of desiring. You must shift into the state of having. Now imagine yourself performing a mundane act as the fulfilled version of yourself. Walking down the street, preparing breakfast, folding a coat, writing a letter. The world does not announce your wealth. You do not boast, you do not chase, you do not seek validation. You move quietly, as one whose wealth is natural. Observe the absence of strain. This is reversibility. When a man receives money, he relaxes because he has proof. When a man relaxes before receiving money, he becomes the proof. Money comes to him because he is no longer seeking it. He is being the one who possesses it. Let me give you a practical exercise. One so simple, most overlook it. Tonight when you lie down to sleep, do not drift into unconsciousness as the man who lacks. Drift into sleep as the man whose accounts overflow. Breathe not with hope, but with completion. Let your last thought before surrender be, I am relieved, because it is settled. If you do this faithfully, night after night, without searching for signs, without checking the world for evidence, without measuring progress, you will witness a reorganization of events so intricate, so subtle, that only in hindsight will you understand how perfectly consciousness guided every step. Money may come through channels familiar to you, raises, opportunities, business growth, or it may arrive from directions you could not possibly predict. An inheritance, a forgiven debt, a legal correction, a forgotten claim, a gift, a sudden opening, a shift in the heart of someone who once withheld. The world is infinitely resourceful. Once you stop attempting to control the means, you need not decide how the world shall deliver. You need only decide how you feel. Let us deepen this further through a sensory scene. Imagine the moment, not a moment when you receive money, but the moment after you have received it. Feel your hands loosen. Feel your posture change. Feel the subtle smile that arises not from excitement, but from recognition. Recognition that you always knew it would unfold in this way. Feel the soft exhale of relief, not because you are surprised, but because the outer world finally mirrors what you have been feeling privately. Let your breath sink into your abdomen. Feel your ribs expand. Feel your spine soften. Let your eyes flutter heavier, as though sleep itself is agreeing with your assumption. In this state, quietly speak from your inner sanctuary. Of course it came. I have been living in this end for so long. And then let silence complete. What words cannot. When you master reversibility, money ceases to be a pursuit and becomes an echo. The world becomes an obedient servant, not because you demand it, but because you no longer demand anything at all. You live in fulfillment, and fulfillment draws its likeness. There is no effort in this. There is no strain. You do not wrestle with circumstance. You accept the truth of your being, and the world adjusts to your acceptance. The law functions, whether you acknowledge it or not. But when you use it consciously, life unfolds with grace. The feeling of relief precedes the manifestation, because the feeling itself is the manifestation. The physical merely arrives afterward to honor what was decreed in silence. There is a command that appears again and again in Scripture, yet few have understood its meaning or its implications. It is not a moral instruction, nor a spiritual suggestion, but a metaphysical law. Do not judge by appearances. This is not a call to ignore the world, nor to be naive to circumstance. It is a reminder that the visible world is not the source of truth, but the shadow of an unseen cause. Everything you see, touch, count, and measure is merely the afterglow of a former assumption. The physical world is delayed reflection. It is not the living thing itself, but the photograph of yesterday's consciousness. Most men live in bondage because they mistake the shadow for the source. They see a number on a bank ledger and assume it reveals reality. They observe the absence of opportunity and assume this absence is proof of limitation. They look at what is and forget that what is merely what was believed. When you judge by appearances, you give power to effects and remove power from the cause. You become reactive rather than creative. You surrender dominion to the world you yourself produced. I tell you, what you see now is the result of who you no longer are. If you adopt a new assumption, if you take on a new financial identity, if you speak to money as one already obeyed, the world may take time to reorganize itself, to reflect that inner shift. But if you lose faith in the unseen because the seen has not yet caught up, you return to the former state and bind yourself again to its results. To ignore appearances is not to deny them, it is to deprive them of authority. When you see a small bank balance, don't react with fear. Don't interpret it as lack. Simply recognize this is the shadow of a former state. It is not who I am now. If you truly know that consciousness is the only reality, then the numbers before you are no more intimidating than yesterday's weather. They may tell you what was, but they cannot dictate what shall be. The world follows. You lead. Yet many make the fatal error of assuming the outer must change first, before they change within. They wait to feel secure until their accounts rise. They wait to feel abundant until money arrives. They wait to feel chosen until someone hires them. That is bondage. Freedom begins when you assume the feeling first, before any evidence appears. Let me give you an example. A man once told me, Neville, I have assumed wealth for weeks, yet my balance has not changed. I asked him, which are you more loyal to, your assumption or the number? He admitted he checked his account daily, hoping to see proof. Each time he looked, he felt disappointment, frustration, disbelief. He assumed wealth at night, then cancelled the assumption each morning by worshipping the very appearance he claimed to transcend. You cannot assume one thing and emotionally respond to another and expect manifestation. What you react to is what you believe. His faith was not in the assumption, but in the appearance. When he saw the number, he silently declared, this is real and what I imagine is pretend. And the world obeyed. After I explained this, he changed his behavior. He stopped checking his accounts entirely. He lived as one for whom money flowed naturally. He walked differently. He breathed differently. He sat at his writing desk with the quiet confidence of a man financially supported by life itself. Weeks passed, then months. And then, in the most unexpected way, a business partner from years before contacted him to revive a project he had abandoned, with a lucrative contract and upfront payment. His letter to me concluded, the moment I stopped seeking proof was the moment proof arrived. This is what it means to ignore appearances. Let us go deeper. To ignore appearances is to dwell in the end mentally before the outer world bends to that end. When nothing outward confirms your new identity, but you persist inwardly, you collapse time. You are no longer waiting for fulfillment. You are fulfillment waiting for the world to notice. Time is not a force that carries events into being. Time is the interval it takes for the outer world to reflect a change already made within. When the inner transformation is complete, absolute, unwavering, natural, the outer change is instantaneous, because there is no longer a gap between assumption and identity. This is why some manifestations appear instantly, while others require what seems like time. The difference is the degree of inner acceptance. Let me illustrate with a concrete example. A woman wrote to me explaining that she had been assuming an abundant life for months, but her salary had not increased. I asked her, when you are at the market and must choose between two items, do you choose as the wealthy woman or as the poor woman? She became silent. I continued, when you speak of your future to friends, do you speak as one who already has or as one who expects to receive? She closed her eyes. I asked again, when you look at prices, do you feel constrained? Tears formed. She realized she had assumed abundance in imagination, but lived in scarcity in action. She performed the imaginal act, but returned to the old identity when confronted with the world. She tried to hold two states at once, and the stronger scarcity ruled her life. We cannot serve two masters. You cannot be rich in imagination and poor in conviction. I instructed her to change her smallest behaviors. First, not by spending more, but by selecting as the woman who already has. She learned to speak from abundance, not of abundance. She learned to feel financially supported, even when paying for necessities. She learned to walk through the city as one who owned her world, not as one begging it for permission. Months later, not through effort, but through recognition, She was offered a position in a private firm at nearly triple her income. She wrote to me, "When the offer came, I felt no excitement, only recognition. I had been living as this woman already. That is collapsing time. Now I offer you a simple exercise, a silent rebellion against appearances. The next time you encounter a bill, do not say, 'I must pay this.' Say instead, 'This is already settled.' When you look at your balance, do not say, 'This must change.' Say, 'This is catching up to who I am.' When someone asks about your financial status, do not speak of lack or need. Say, 'All things unfold perfectly for me. Nothing is withheld.' This is not denial, it is declaration. Here is a deeper truth. Appearances often intensify just before they dissolve. The old state resists death. A man assuming wealth may experience unexpected bills, delays, or challenges precisely because the old pattern is collapsing. This is a sign, not of failure, but of completion. The question is not, are conditions changing? The question is, am I unchanged by conditions? Once you no longer react to the world must react to you. There was a man who came to me deeply discouraged. He had assumed wealth faithfully, he said, yet his landlord threatened eviction and creditors pressed harder. I told him, "You are facing the funeral procession of your old state. Do not resurrect it by fear." Instead of pleading for time, he sat in stillness and assumed, "I am supplied. I am secure. All is settled in perfect order." Hours later, a man he had helped years earlier offered him work, not as charity, but as recognition. His rent was covered, his debts negotiated, and new income flowed without pressure. And he wrote, "The crisis was not a failure of the law. It was the final breath of the old state. Ignore appearances. Live from the end. Be unmoved. The world is a shadow. You are the source." When you no longer consult the shadow for reassurance, the shadow must take its shape from you. If consciousness is the only creative power, and if every event in your life is the outpicturing of your inner state, then no man you meet, no institution you face, no letter you receive, no employer you speak to is acting independently of you. The banker, the creditor, the client, the benefactor, the stranger in the street, each plays the part assigned to them by your assumption. They do not originate action, they perform it. Everyone is you pushed out. This is not a poetic idea, nor a metaphor of psychology. It is the literal mechanics of manifestation. Every individual in your world is drawn into your life as a reflection of the state you occupy. If you assume that life withholds from you, you will meet only those who deny. If you assume that you are unwanted in the marketplace, people will pass over you with cold indifference. If you assume that money is difficult, every transaction will feel like a wrestling of wills. But if you assume that you are the one to whom abundance naturally flows, others will appear as instruments of that assumption, though they themselves may not know why they feel compelled to help you. There was a man who attended my lectures for months yet remained frustrated. He insisted that the world was against him. He said employers dismissed him unfairly, banks refused him credit, and friends withheld opportunities. I asked him, "What do you assume of men?" He paused, then confessed that deep within he believed others were jealous, withholding, and uninterested in his success. His outer world was faithfully reflecting this inner conviction. I instructed him not to change men, but to change his assumption of what men are to him. Each night, he imagined men smiling whenever he entered a room, speaking to him with warmth, treating him as someone of great worth. He began speaking silently to others, as though they admired and respected him, not from arrogance, but from certainty that his presence blessed those he encountered. In less than 6 weeks, he received an invitation from a former colleague to join a partnership that elevated his position and salary far beyond what he thought possible. In his letter to me, he wrote, "Men did not change, I did. They simply reflected the new nature of my consciousness. I no longer feared their disapproval, therefore none appeared." If you wish money to flow through men, you must first see men as channels of your abundance, rather than obstacles between you and it. The banker is not the gatekeeper, he is the messenger. The employer is not the judge, he is the mirror. Clients do not decide your worth, They reveal your belief in your own worthiness to receive. Do not attempt to manipulate men by flattery or persuasion. Do not beg them for opportunity or approval. Instead, bless them inwardly with the recognition that they are yourself in another form. Speak silently to them, not as though you need them, but as though your state flows into theirs. When I was discharged from the army, the official who processed my papers behaved in a manner most accommodating. He spoke to me with such respect and urgency that one might imagine I was of high rank or influence. Yet, I was no such thing. The man merely played the role assigned by my assumption that I was free. I did not petition him for liberation. I assumed liberation, and he became the agent of that assumption. There was a woman who desired a position at a prestigious firm, yet she feared the hiring manager. She imagined him difficult, proud, demanding, and therefore he was. Every interview left her anxious and defeated. I told her not to imagine the interview, but to imagine afterward, standing outside the building with the thrill of acceptance. In that scene, she felt gratitude toward the man as though he had enthusiastically welcomed her into the role. She repeated this nightly until it felt natural, effortless. When she returned to the office, the man greeted her with warmth and familiarity. His tone changed entirely. He praised her when previously he had questioned her. What had changed? Only her assumption of him. She wrote to me that evening saying, "I no longer saw him as a judge. I saw him as a partner in my success, and he behaved exactly as one." Now let us speak of banks, for many tremble at the idea of speaking to such institutions with authority. A student once told me he dreaded visiting the bank because he expected to be declined, delayed, or questioned. I told him, the bank has no power except what you give it. It is not a fortress you must storm, but a mirror that returns your attitude toward wealth. He began speaking silently to the institution itself, calling it his faithful steward, his orderly keeper of treasures, his obedient servant, not as flattery, but as truth. Within weeks, his credit was increased, his interest reduced, and correspondence from the institution addressed him with unusual courtesy. These changes were not bureaucratic luck. They were consciousness directing men to act. A merchant from the South once attended my meeting. He struggled terribly with clients who delayed payments. He believed customers were unreliable and foolish, and so they behaved. I told him to stop imagining others as irresponsible and begin seeing them as prosperous, honorable, eager to transact with him. Bless your clients, I said. Call them faithful and generous in your inner speech, and they will prove you right. Months later, he wrote to me, "Those who once paid late now pay early, and new customers arrive with enthusiasm." I did not change my patrons. I changed my assumption of them. Let me speak now of family. For many believe blood relations are exceptions to the law. They are not. If a man sees his family as burden, they will burden him. If he sees them as barriers to success, they will resist him unconsciously. But if he sees them as allies in his prosperity, as joyful participants in his wealth, their behavior will reflect his inner decree. A young man complained that his father dismissed his ambitions and discouraged his ventures. I said, "Stop arguing with him. See him as proud, supportive, praising your success." The young man imagined his father shaking his hand with admiration. Soon, without confrontation, the father became his greatest advocate, even facilitating new opportunities. No man acts apart from your assumption. The most extraordinary transformations occur when you cease attempting to change the world and instead assume that the world has already changed. Another story. A writer sought a commission for a major publication, but received silence in reply. Instead of pleading or resubmitting, she revised her assumption. She imagined the editor praising her work, requesting more pieces, and recommending her to others. She walked through the city that week as one who had already been accepted, already admired. 2 weeks later, she received not merely an acceptance, but a contract for continuous work, with the editor remarking that her voice was one the publication had been searching for. She had not persuaded him. She had assumed him. Do not attempt to influence others by force, argument, or charm. Influence them by being the version of yourself who does not need persuasion. When you assume wealth, others will feel compelled to treat you as wealthy, not because they choose to, but because your state demands a corresponding role from them. One who is truly abundant cannot be spoken to as a beggar. One who knows his worth cannot be ignored. One who embodies wealth is not selected, he is recognized. Men respond not to your words, but to the vibration of your being. If you approach a banker trembling, he feels the tremble. If you approach a potential client from a sense of inferiority, he feels the imbalance. If you seek approval, the world withholds it. If you require validation, the world denies it. But if you stand in silent inner dignity, others feel compelled to meet you at that height. Assume the end within, and the world becomes the stage on which that assumption performs. When you meet a man, speak silently to him from your imagined state, not from your circumstance. Speak to him as though he is the bearer of good news. Speak to him as though he is delighted to know you. Speak to him as though he is eager to bless you, for he will feel these assumptions without hearing a word. You are not convincing others, you are convincing yourself, and the world behaves accordingly. No one in your world is independent of you. All are fragments of the one consciousness, appearing as many. Treat them as such, and they will rise to the level of your assumption. The world is not your opponent. The world is your echo. There are memories buried within you that still speak long after the moment has passed, and though the circumstance has ended, the feeling continues to produce after images in your world. A man may no longer be poor, yet the humiliation he once felt at being unable to pay a bill may continue to shape his financial life decades later. A woman may now have steady work, yet the shame she felt when asking to borrow money as a child may still whisper, "You are undeserving." These memories are not dead. They are seeds still bearing fruit. To change the outer world while leaving the inner impressions untouched is to prune the branches while leaving the root intact. Eventually the tree grows back. The law of revision exists to uproot these inner impressions and replace them with new ones that bear a different harvest. Let us move slowly now. I want you to recall, not intellectually, but emotionally, a scene from your past involving money that still carries a sting. Do not choose a minor one. Choose the one you avoid. Perhaps you were standing at a counter, unable to pay. Perhaps you overheard family speaking of what we can't afford. Perhaps someone mocked your poverty. Perhaps you felt smaller than life itself because of a number. Whatever the scene, allow it to rise gently, not to relive pain, but to liberate consciousness from it. Once the scene appears, do not observe it from a distance. Enter it. Do not analyze it. Live in it as though it is present again. Feel the old emotion rising, not to be magnified, but so that it may be replaced. You cannot revise what you refuse to face. Now that you are in the scene, change it, not by force, not by imagination as fantasy, but by assumption. If in the original moment you felt shame, now feel dignity. If you once felt lack, now feel ease. If you once felt powerless, now feel authority. Replace the emotion at the core of the memory. You are not changing history. You are changing the consciousness that produced that history. The past exists only as a memory now, and memory lives in consciousness. When consciousness changes, the past changes. If you were denied, imagine being welcomed. If you were embarrassed at a register, imagine the clerk smiling warmly, treating you with honor, speaking to you with respect. If someone rejected you because of money, imagine them admiring you, proud to know you, speaking your name with affection. Do not imagine revenge, imagine redemption. The new scene must lift you, not diminish another. A woman once shared with me that as a young girl, she stood in a store while her mother argued with the clerk because they lacked a few coins to pay for food. She carried that feeling of being too poor to belong well into adulthood. After revision, she reimagined the clerk speaking kindly, her mother paying with confidence, the other customers smiling instead of staring. The moment changed, and with it, her identity. Within months, she found herself receiving unexpected financial help from relatives who had never before offered support. They did not change. Her assumption of what others are to her changed. Another man had once borrowed money from a friend and was unable to repay it on time. The shame of that moment shaped his entire adult relationship with finances. He revised the scene until he felt gratitude instead of humiliation, and imagined the friend speaking kindly and understanding. Shortly after, that same friend contacted him out of nowhere with a business opportunity that multiplied his income. The friend did not become more generous. The man finally assumed himself worthy of generosity. The key is not the words spoken in the revised scene, but the feeling you carry as you leave it. When you walk away feeling dignified, secure, honored, something profound has been rewritten in consciousness. The world will echo that new vibration. Do this nightly with one scene at a time. Do not hurry. Revision is not a technique to manipulate the past. It is a ritual to claim your true identity. Rewrite each memory until it no longer stirs pain, but a quiet sense of power. When past scenes cease to produce fear, the future ceases to mirror it. Gently now, let us practice together. Close your eyes. Return to the scene. Hear the sounds around you. Feel the temperature of the room. Re-enter your body as it was then. Do not hover above it. Occupy it. Now breathe. Let the old emotion rise, not to dwell in it, but to lift it. And now, in the same place, with the same faces, let something shift. Speak silently as the one who now knows his worth. Feel the ease of abundance. Let your shoulders relax. Let the scene unfold again, but this time as it would have appeared if you had already possessed wealth. Do not try to force images. Simply hold the new feeling and allow the details to align naturally. When the scene feels complete, end it. Do not repeat endlessly. One clean revision is more powerful than hours of repetition without feeling. Now rest in the new memory as though it always happened that way. Let the subconscious adopt this version as the only truth. This is how you collapse time. This is how you cut the cord between past assumptions and present circumstances. This is how you free yourself from old identities that still whisper lack into the present moment. You are not revising to escape the past. You are revising to remember who you were before the past convinced you otherwise. The moment you revise a scene, the world begins rearranging to match the new assumption. People who once withheld now give. Opportunities once blocked now open. Situations once humiliating now unfold with grace. You are not at the mercy of history. You are the author of it. And if you can change the past, then nothing in your future stands outside your control. For all time is in consciousness, and consciousness is yours. There comes a moment in this journey when you no longer practice wealth. You are wealth. Until that point, you will find yourself trying, adjusting, reminding, correcting, and returning to the state again and again. There is nothing wrong with that. A seed must be watered repeatedly before it becomes a tree. But once the tree has taken root, it no longer needs constant attention to remain itself. Oak does not wake each morning wondering whether it is oak. It simply is. So it is with consciousness. There is a profound shift when the assumption of wealth moves from an exercise you perform to the identity from which you live. At first you speak to money. Later, money speaks through you. At first you remind yourself to feel abundant. Later, abundance becomes the natural resting place of your being. At first you think like one who hopes to receive. Later, you think like one who already has and wonders only how to express more fully. The true measure that your assumption has taken root is not found in your bank account, though that will certainly change. It is found in your reactions. A man who is wealthy in consciousness does not panic when an unexpected expense appears. A woman who is wealthy in consciousness is not startled by opportunities. She expects them. When something breaks, the wealthy consciousness does not say, "How will I afford this?" but rather, "How shall this be replaced?" without the slightest ripple of concern. You will know the identity has formed when the old reactions no longer arise. When you hear others complain of scarcity and feel a gentle distance, as though they are describing a world you once visited, but no longer inhabit. When you see a bill and feel gratitude for the means to pay it, whether or not the means have yet appeared. When you engage in commerce with ease, not calculating survival, but expressing freedom. I once spoke to a man who had been applying these teachings diligently. He said, "Neville, I no longer imagine checks arriving or numbers changing. I simply walk as though I belong to the world that once intimidated me. That is identity." He did not say, "I hope to have wealth." He said, I live as one who already has. It was not bravado, it was quiet inevitability. Another student told me, I noticed the change when I stopped saving receipts as evidence of lack and began saving them as records of abundance. Looking at the same piece of paper, one man says, look what I lost, while another says, look what I commanded. The paper did not change. His identity did. When you have assumed wealth, you no longer measure your progress by physical evidence. You do not check your bank account to confirm your state. A man does not look in a mirror to prove he is alive. He knows it before seeing his reflection. When the state becomes natural, the outer world becomes merely a delayed echo. It no longer informs you. It reports to you. You may notice subtle changes first. You walk taller. You speak less urgently. You think in terms of expansion rather than preservation. You forgive faster. You spend time differently. Not because you force yourself to, but because a new self has new priorities. You treat others with generosity, not to prove abundance, but because abundance has become your nature. You no longer ask, how can I get? But rather, how shall I express? These are not behaviors to imitate. They are indicators of a state already assumed. If you imitate the behavior without assuming the state, you will feel strain. But if you assume the state, the behavior will flow effortlessly. Do not try to seem wealthy. Be wealthy in consciousness, and life will arrange the outward signs. There was a woman who told me she knew her identity had shifted when she stopped counting every transaction. She said, I no longer felt the need to guard because I no longer believed anything could be taken from me. I am the source from which money flows. Shortly after, she received not just an increase in income, but offers to invest, invitations to collaborate, and financial gifts she had not sought. Identity attracts, identity commands, identity expresses. You may ask, how do I know when the shift is complete? You will know because effort ceases. You will speak to money not to convince it, but as a friend speaks to another, with familiarity and ease. You will not practice wealth before sleep. You will fall asleep as wealth. The imaginal scene dissolves into a simple knowing. I am. When this identity is born, money no longer feels external. It feels like breath, effortless, rhythmic, inevitable. You do not praise its arrival, nor fear its departure, for it is simply the garment through which abundance expresses itself. The final sign of identity is this. The desire disappears, not because you lost passion, but because you no longer desire what you already are. A poor man desires wealth. A wealthy man desires expression. When you no longer seek wealth, but instead feel compelled to circulate it, move it, invest it, share it, expand it. When money becomes not a goal, but a medium, you have crossed the threshold, for you no longer worship the symbol. You embody the source, and when you stand in that identity, you need do nothing extraordinary to attract abundance. You simply exist, and the world reorganizes itself accordingly. The technique was the bridge. The identity is the destination. There comes a moment when words cease to be mere utterances of the tongue and become movements of being itself. When speech no longer describes reality, but creates it. When the voice is not a sound vibrating in air, but the vibration of consciousness commanding matter. In that sacred space, language is no longer communication, it is law. In my lectures, I have often said, assumption, if persisted in, hardens into fact. But understand this. The spoken word is simply assumption clothed in sound. When you speak from a state, you are not speaking to the world. You are speaking as the world's cause. And money, like all manifestations, hears not the words themselves, but the consciousness from which they rise. So before we speak, we must become still. We must withdraw attention from the senses, from the appearance of numbers, from the memory of struggle, from every echo of the former self. We must enter that inner sanctuary, where thought no longer negotiates with conditions, but proclaims. Only then may the command be uttered. Let us enter such a state now, slowly, deliberately, as one entering a cathedral. Breathe, as though every breath confirms your dominion. Let the world of effects fall away. Let the feeling of having already received expand in your chest. Let there be no request, no petition, no hope, only knowing, for only a king commands, a beggar pleads. Now from this state I speak. Money is my instrument. It serves my purpose. It moves where I send it. It obeys my consciousness. Rest in that. Do not repeat it as one reciting scripture to appease a distant deity. Speak it as truth issuing from the center of your being. Speak it as though you are recalling a fact long forgotten. Speak it not to change the world, but to remind the world who you are. And again, slowly, money is my instrument, never my identity, never my source. It is an echo of my state. I do not seek it. I summon it, not through force, but through being. It comes because I am the cause. It flows because I am its channel. It remains because I sustain the state that calls it forth. Speak softly, but with finality. I do not serve money. Money serves me. I do not chase money. Money moves toward me. I do not fear money. Money is at peace in my possession. Now allow silence. For silence is not the absence of speech, but the completion of it. In that stillness, the declaration sinks beneath the surface mind and takes root in the deep. There it operates without effort, without strain, without repetition. For law is fulfilled, not by rehearsal, but by embodiment. When you speak to money from this state, you do not speak to an object. You speak to yourself in another form. You speak to a fragment of your own consciousness, temporarily arranged as coins, notes, ledgers, balances, salaries, inheritances, opportunities. All these are masks worn by the one being. Therefore, I speak to money as to a faithful servant. You rise when I rise. You expand when I expand. You appear where I am conscious of being supplied. You vanish where I am conscious of lack. And because I now dwell in abundance, you become abundant in my world. The world may call this arrogance, but this is not arrogance. This is remembrance. This is the return to the rightful order of creation. Consciousness first, manifestation second. Money, like all things, answers to I am. So let this final utterance seal the state. I command by being. I speak as the law, not to the law. What I decree within is fulfilled without money. You are mine, to direct, not to fear. You exist to express my purpose. You obey my consciousness. It is done. There always comes a moment, after the demonstration of the law, when a man realizes that what he sought was never truly the thing itself, but the awakening it provoked within him. For money, health, companionship, success, these are shadows cast by deeper movements of being. They arise to teach man that he creates, and once he knows he creates, the shadows lose their fascination, and he turns to the light from which they spring. Many who first come to my lectures do so out of need. They are pressed by circumstances. They are burdened by want. They seek the law as a means to secure comfort. And there is no shame in this, for the law is given for that very purpose, that man may redeem himself from bondage. But once he proves the law, once he sees that imagination molds reality, he discovers that all the wealth of the world cannot compare to the discovery of the one who imagines. For the true treasure is not the manifestation, it is the revelation of the power behind it. When I speak of money, obeying consciousness, I speak of a shadow, obeying its light. But when I speak of the promised child, the birth from above, the union of man and God within the soul, I speak of the light itself, awakening to its own glory. There is a night, silent, sacred, unlike any other, in which man discovers that the being he has been addressing as God is his own wonderful human imagination. Not the imagination that daydreams or wanders, but the primal creative power, the eternal I am clothed as man. On that night, something far greater than wealth is found. No manifestation of the law, however grand, can prepare a man for the moment when he realizes that the creator he has been seeking has been himself all along. Not the little self shaped by memory and name, but the ancient self who whispered, before the world was, I am. In that moment, money ceases to be a goal and becomes a gesture, a simple movement of being among countless others. You no longer seek abundance, for you feel yourself to be the source of all expression. You no longer pray to a distant deity, for you hear the voice within declare, I am he. And when the inner man rises, crowned with the realization of his identity, no external symbol can add to his worth. What is gold to the sun? What is a coin to the ocean? from which all metals are born. What is wealth to the one who imagined the world itself? The law is given to awaken man. The promised experience fulfills him. One gives freedom in the world of Caesar, freedom from fear, from lack, from dependence upon external conditions. The other grants entrance into the realm of God, where man discovers himself to be the source of all conditions. When this dawns upon you, you no longer speak to money as a servant. You bless it simply as a form in which your being delights to appear. You no longer command abundance. You recognize abundance as your natural emanation. You no longer look outward. You withdraw into the heart and find the world is but your own reflection. And when the final veil is lifted, you will know why Scripture declares the kingdom of heaven is within you. Not above, not beyond, not earned, not bestowed, within. The wealth you manifested in the world was but a symbol pointing you back to the immeasurable wealth of your true identity. The freedom you claimed in consciousness was but the first taste of the freedom that comes when consciousness awakens to itself. And in that quiet hour, your words change once more, not to command, nor to summon, nor to assume, but to simply acknowledge, I and my Father are one. I am the source from which all things flow. I am the eternal imagination manifesting as man. All that appears, appears through me. All that departs, departs through me. Nothing is outside of my being. I am. And when you speak from this height, even silence becomes creation.